And welcome back to Hannity, and here's part two of our interview from earlier today with 2016 Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. Let me go to the issue of comments you made last night. We're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Toughest deal to make of any kind of deal that I've ever seen is Israel-Palestine.
Because it's such a mess.
Toughest deal. The Palestinians and the Israelis don't exactly, they're not exactly meshing.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the reasons that I said it last night, the toughest single deal to make is getting them together. And I've been told by some Israelis that no matter who it is, you'll never do it. I'm going to give it a shot. But I will say, it is probably of all the deals, right?
Well, you did mention that these kids that are funded by Hamas and Hezbollah.
They grow up hating.
They're growing up to hate
That's why
Israel.
It's so tough. They grow up hating. They grow up, things were told to me that are incredible, and I won't even say
How
them,
important, though, is our alliance? They're our number one ally in the region, and that alliance has been, well, fractured in a big way.
Israel is so important. What Obama has done to Israel is a disgrace. How they even talk to us is hard to believe. But Israel, and how they talk to Obama. You know, I have friends, they support Obama. I said, how do you do it? It's almost like they do it out of habit. They agree he's been terrible. You look at what he's done to Israel with just this Iran deal, which is such a terrible deal. He has been the worst thing that's ever happened to Israel. Now, a lot of my friends that are Jewish do not support him any longer, but I still have some that do. I say, how can you do it?
He's been horrible to Israel.
You know what? I think it's habit. They do it out of habit.
What do you think of Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think he's good, and I like him.
Strong?
He's always been strong. He's always been good to me. He asked me to do a commercial for him. I was his only celebrity that he has to do a commercial.
Right?
He said, would you do a commercial when he ran for office? But I think he's very good. I think he's been treated very, very badly by Obama.
Let me get you to expand. You always talk about trade, free trade. You say you're free trade. You want fair trade.
Well, I want it to be smart trade. It's got to be smart.
But not protectionist.
No, not protectionist. But you have to use that as a
leverage.
Of course.
It's a negotiation.
We don't use anything. Hey, look, we let China dump their stuff on us, but if you try and do business in China, you can't. I mean, it's impossible. You can't get your stuff in. It's very hard.
Right.
You can't get your stuff in. And you have to pay tax. So it's got to be equal. It's not equal. And we're losing $500 billion this year.
And a trade deficit with China.
We have a trade deficit with China with $500 billion. I'm going to negotiate. Believe me, we're
you
not
want
lose
U.S.
that kind
cars
of money.
sold in China.
I want, yes, and I want them made here and sold in China.
Exactly.
Like Boeing. Boeing goes and takes an order. Now they have to build airplane factories in China. And be careful, South Carolina and other places, and Seattle, by the way.
They're going to lose factories and manufacturing
eventually, in 5 years, they'll start doing their monetary manipulation against you. Nobody has ever manipulated a currency. They're like chess grandmasters, okay?
Yeah.
Nobody's ever done it like China. And I told the folks last night, right here, I said, be careful of your Boeing plant, because you think it's good now, but in 3 years, when the ones are built, the big ones in China, and the currency manipulation takes place, South Carolina's going to have a problem.
Look how bad the economy is when you talk about banks now charging you to keep your money.
Yeah, that's right. It's opposite.
Let me ask you this. You actually said something that really intrigued me. There's still 28 pages of the 9/11 Commission report that have never been revealed.
Right, and they should reveal it.
I got the impression that you knew something maybe we don't know about the Saudis.
I think you will find out when that's opened. I think you're going to find out that Saudi Arabia had a lot to do with the ripping down of the World Trade Center.
Would you open that if you became president?
I would open it, yeah.
You would? Let the American people know.
What I'm saying, and look, we attacked Iraq. But Iraq didn't knock down the World Trade Center. When you open up those pages, you're going to find out who did.
That's pretty interesting. I played a tape for you on my radio show the other day. Bill Clinton gave a speech. He'd been offered bin Laden, knew bin Laden was a threat.
Should have taken him out.
Should have taken him out.
Should have taken him out.
And also, even though you were against the war, and you and I had some debates at the time, you were against the war from the beginning.
Totally against the war. And you would know that, because you and I have been doing this for a long time.
Well, we just disagree.
And you and I used to fight about it.
We used to fight about it.
Now you probably say Trump was sort of like right. You know, not sort of right.
Well, the thing is, once we go to war, what I'm afraid of is we lose 58,000 people in Vietnam, we lose 5,000 people in Iraq, and then Obama politicizes it, or they politicize Vietnam. And why did we send American sons and daughters to fight, bleed, and die, and then we only give Ramadi, Fallujah, Mosul, and Tikrit over to ISIS? That's insanity.
We shouldn't have gone into Iraq because we destabilized the Middle East. Okay. Once we're in,
you win.
The way we got out was horrible. You win. You're right. But the way we got out was horrible, where he announces a date, and now the enemy pulls back. They say, why should we fight? You know, despite what you hear, they don't want to die. They say, why should we fight? We get out, and the mess starts. But we should have left troops. I didn't want to go in, but we should have left troops there.
and sustain the victories we
should have
had.
done something.
And I do agree with you about keeping the oil and giving the money to the
I've been
military.
saying it for 4 years.
Why are we paying the cost?
Now
That's
ISIS
crazy.
is so rich, and also paying the cost for all of these armies that we're supporting. I mean, Saudi Arabia, so rich, making $1 billion a day before the oil went down, so now they're making half, right?
I was glad to hear you say the other day, there were only 3 people that were waterboarded totally. One was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who gave the information about the courier that led to bin Laden.
Right.
Unknown
Right.
story,
Right.
it seems, by a lot of people. And I always use the analogy, if you saw your child getting kidnapped by 3 people and you tackled one of the 3 and 2 people got away with your child, what wouldn't you do to get the information? You said you would go further. Explain.
This came up with Ted Cruz. They asked him a question about waterboarding. You know, is it good? Is it fine? Is it okay? And he was very weak on his answer. It was a bad, bad answer. And I could see he didn't know. He wanted to stay away from it. He didn't like it. I mean, I understand that. He didn't like it. Then they said, what would you do? I said, I'd approve it immediately and I'd make it worse. Okay?
In other words, whatever it took to get
whatever
information.
it took. Excuse me. And I preface it by saying, in the Middle East, they're chopping off heads. I haven't seen that since medieval times. I read when I was a young guy in history class, I would read about medieval times. They chopped off heads. Now, James Foley, these wonderful people. I know his parents. They're incredible people. They're chopping off heads.
Scary.
Okay?
That's evil in our time.
And here we are. They're chopping off heads, and we want information about them, and we can't waterboard. Okay? We can't waterboard. No. So when they came to me, by the way, it was very interesting. They came to me, they asked me the same question. I said, I'd approve it immediately, but it's got to be worse. And I got a standing ovation. I didn't know what I was going to get. You know, I didn't exactly poll it. I don't poll things.
You don't
like
poll.
these other
You don't have
people.
pollsters at all.
No, I do what's right.
What's your reaction to Obama saying Donald Trump won't be president? I don't believe he'll be president.
Well, I was complimented. He's been the worst president in the history of our country. I was complimented, and I actually said it's lucky that I didn't run 4 years ago, because unfortunately Romney didn't take us to the promised land. It didn't work out for Romney. But I said, you're lucky I didn't run 4 years ago, because you wouldn't be a 2-term president. And I really mean that. I think I would have. You remember when I was thinking about running, and I was number 1 in all the polls and everything? But I was very busy. I had many, many jobs going up all over the world, and I had my children that were sort of young and learning, and well, now they're in great shape. Ivanka, Don, Eric, and I have great executives, so it doesn't matter.
Conservatives were concerned in the debate about, you said, about Planned Parenthood. They do good things for women. I just don't like the abortion side. Here's my question.
That's what I say. It's true.
Should American taxpayers, though, pay $500 billion to that organization
No, I said
a year?
defund. I didn't say pay.
Yeah.
I said I have a lot of respect for some of the things. They do the cervical cancer on women. They do many, many good things. I know many women that
no
think it's
taxpayer
great.
money.
No, not while they do abortions. I made that clear. I made that clear, I think, at the debate.
All right, last question. Things are getting heated. It always happens historically in South Carolina. You threatened a lawsuit with Cruz. Where does that stand?
Well, we'll see. I mean, look, I have a couple of them in theory. Look, was he born? He was born in Canada. He lived there for 4 years. He was a citizen of Canada until 15 months ago.
You're not going to file that lawsuit, will you?
I'll have to get your approval, okay?
Mr. Trump, good to see you. Thank you.
very
Appreciate
much.
it. Thanks so much.